Hey, I'm Nick,
And I'm Ricky.
and welcome to the Demand Gen Daily podcast. All right, as always, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and leave us questions. We do answer them. And today's theme is digital marketers. Please remember about the nuance. Don't lose it.
That's right.
Don't lose the nuance. So, Ricky, thoughts around this?
Yeah, this is something that I've been beating this drum for a while now. I feel like for the past few months, for the past year, it's one of these things where it's so critical, even when you have a team that is like super technically skilled, when you've got digital marketers, whether they're on your team or whether it's the agency you're working with, even if they're extremely technically savvy and they understand the platforms, they know how to make the platform win for them. When you find those situations where you're not quite winning, it's so often I find it's the nuances getting lost. And this is like the critical piece that needs to be uncovered. And often the nice thing is like we put the systems in place where the data will often lead us to the path of, okay, what are we missing here so that we can win? And then that allows us to address that. So having the data for one is critical. But this really comes down to if you're an internal team or an agency, communicating in terms of what is like the critical pieces of the product and the service that are unique and that you're not making it too general or too vague. You really have to get down to the nuance of why is this product service different? What's the angle? And if you're not doing that, you're going to have a very hard time being successful, whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, any platform really.
Yeah, so this topic is born from this event that happened like somewhat recently, where it's a new client and they had a previous agency working on their account, and the previous agency was doing everything technically correct. So if you look at it from the outside in, it's like, yeah, like they're set up right, the objectives like look good, everything like looks good at a first glance, but it's just not working. And that is like the starting point of, okay, it's nothing technical, so it has to be the nuance behind it. And Ricky, could you maybe walk us through what you mean by the nuance specifically? What does it mean?
Sure. Yeah, the nuance is generally if we're using keywords as an example, you could use the product keyword, right? You could go to your client's website, you can look at the keywords they're using, and you can put those into, let's say, a Google Ads campaign, and then you can just assume that Google is going to find you the right people to target. But the thing is that if you don't understand the nuance, then when you look at the output of what Google is doing, you won't be able to understand whether it's actually what you should be seeing or whether it's incorrect. So basically, you want to make sure that you have enough negative keywords. You want to make sure that you're reviewing your search terms report to see that the output actually matches the input that you're giving it. Because, and I've seen this in so many cases, Google is horrible at the nuance. We know it's great when it comes to measuring behavior and matching up cohorts and personas, but when it comes to really understanding the nuance of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get the system to do, it's not great at this. So you have to give it so much information to ensure that it gets the nuance right.
And even if you give it information, if it all results in positive, in its opinion, positive outcomes, like conversions or like leads or add to carts or whatever it might be, even those things can actually be screwing you up and getting you further and further away, because as those things that happen that Google believes to be positive, like form fills or what
False
have
positives.
yeah, they become false positives, which actually makes the algorithm worse over time for you, to the point where you have to either restart it brand new because too much of the wrong data has now been processed and optimized for. And I think that this is where people look at specific items too generally. Let me explain. When you look at your sales and marketing funnel, so it all starts online, and then whether you're selling something direct, it stays online, or if you're B2B, eventually somebody picks up a phone, salesperson calls somebody. You have to always keep in mind the entire funnel. So when you're looking at like how many people are seeing this, how many people are interacting with this, how many people are going to clicking through to the landing page, how many people are looking at the video on the page or not bouncing in the first 10 seconds, looking at these numbers all the way to a form fill, and then even tracking it after a form fill. So it's like, okay, it's an MQL now, a marketing qualified lead. How many of those turn into a sales qualified lead? How many of those turn into a proposal? And how many of those turn into a sale? Like looking at the full funnel is something that people aren't doing often enough. And this is where the false positive hits, right? I've talked about this at length in the past where it's okay, you have a lead, it comes in, and you paid $50 for it. Sounds great. And there's another lead that you paid $400 for. Doesn't sound so great. Okay, the $400 lead closes 5 times more, or like first cheap lead closes at 5% chance. The second one closes at, okay, that's something in of itself. And then all of a sudden you realize that the $400 lead not only closes 50% of the time, but on top of that, the average sale is quadruple. All of a sudden, $400 sales, like the cheapest lead on the planet when you take those two factors into consideration, because it's a false positive. But if you only look at the fact that it's a $50 lead, you're like, oh, $50 lead, let's take all the money away from the $400 lead, dump it all into the $50 lead. But again, and like this sounds like really obvious. I repeat it all the time because I see it all the time, over and over again, because people are looking at numbers that don't matter. They're not looking at money. They're not looking at revenue. And because they get blinded by the super high conversion rate, or, oh, we have this like 20% conversion on this landing page, it's so good, but it doesn't actually sell anything all the time, because not just that it happened overnight. They've been working on that landing page for months, half a year. Look how good the conversion percentage is. Yeah, and it generates no sales compared to everything else. And you shut everything else off. And then you're asking yourself why the revenue is no longer profitable on aggregate from your marketing and sales activities. It's like you optimized yourself out of the money.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest red flags to watch for is go and manually go through all of the submissions, all the form submissions, check them out. Don't just assume, oh, Google is sending me conversions, that means we're winning. Go actually look at what's coming through. And if it's irrelevant, if it's spam, if it's something that just couldn't be workable in terms of a sales close, then you're probably not close enough to the money yet when it comes to the nuance of it. And you need to figure out a way to refine that further. And if you're not sure, by the way, and if you're looking at the form submissions, then go either talk to your client or call up a sales guy on your team and talk to them and go through it together, figure out whether this is actually useful or not. Because it's so easy to run a report and say, oh yeah, like we're getting conversions, we're winning, look at the low cost, and it's not helping anyone.
Yeah, and in a situation where it's not e-com, right? Because e-com, you can tell right away. It's, oh, like tons of people are going through, adding to cart, not checking out. It's okay, like that's a problem. Is it the checkout problem, or is it that it's the wrong people problem? Like it's the data is super obvious, but again, looking at the full funnel, even in e-com, highly required on a per campaign basis. Now, if this is B2B, look, if your CRM system isn't immaculate, don't worry, almost no one's is. Tell your salespeople, like for every single MQL that comes in, score it out of 10, right? It's like they've talked to the client, it's scored out of 10. And then figure out where the 8s, 9s, and 10s are coming from, right? What campaigns are those coming from? And then get more of those. Anything else to add, Ricky?
No, absolutely. I was just going to say, actually, that's a really good method. It doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple. If you want to just figure out some of these leads, whether they're quality or not, do it manually. Use a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just get it done so you get the right information. And that's a great starting point.
So remember, always look at the whole funnel, not just part of it, not just at the key KPI that you're looking at. Follow the money. Look at the entire funnel as a whole. Figure out where the blockages in that funnel is, and then work towards clearing those blockages up. Again, Nick and Ricky here from Blue Meta. Until next time.